The universe, in all its infinite vastness, had never felt so small. Alex Riker had spent most of his 32 years drifting from one star system to another, running jobs for people he didn't trust, working alongside criminals who only watched his back so long as it suited them. That was the nature of life beyond the core worlds, where the law was just a word and trust was a liability. But even he had never expected this. Blood matted his side where a pulse round had grazed him. The wound burned, more from the betrayal than the actual injury. The air in the derelict cargo hold was thick with the scent of scorched metal and ozone, remnants of the gunfight that had left his so-called crew dead, except for one. Tate. That bastard had been his partner for 5 years. They had pulled heists together, dodged bounty hunters, and survived the war zones of Kepler 9. And yet, when the chance came to sell him out, Tate hadn't even hesitated. Alex pressed his back against a crate, breathing shallowly. The ship, a rust-bucket freighter called the Corsair's Luck, was dead in the void now, drifting after its engines had been disabled. Outside the reinforced viewport, the stars were cold and indifferent. "Come on, Riker," Tate's voice echoed through the cargo bay, footsteps clanking on the grated floor. "You know how this ends. You should have taken the deal when you had the chance." Alex exhaled slowly. He had known the job smelled rotten, but greed had won over instinct. Now he was paying the price. "You were always going to sell me out, weren't you?" Alex called back, gritting his teeth as he shifted to get a better shot angle. Tate chuckled. "Not at first. But hey, credits talk. And the Avari cartel? They talk real loud." Alex grimaced. The Avari were more than just criminals. They were interstellar slavers, flesh merchants who trafficked in both human and alien cargo. If Tate had made a deal with them, then it meant only one thing. Alex wasn't meant to make it out of here alive. He had seconds before Tate found him. His mind raced through options, but escape routes were dwindling fast. His ship, the Stormhawk, was locked in the docking bay, inaccessible without bypassing the control room, and Tate had at least 2 armed men with him. Then he saw it, a flickering holomap projected on a cracked console. The ship's escape pods were still functional. One last, desperate chance. Alex inhaled sharply and made his move. He rolled from behind the crate, firing 2 rapid shots toward Tate. The first shot missed, but the second didn't. Tate staggered back, clutching his thigh where the plasma round had seared through flesh. He screamed in pain, cursing as Alex sprinted toward the emergency release lever on the far wall. Alarms blared as he slammed his palm against it, and the cargo hold's side hatch began to open. "No, you son of a..." Alex dove through just as Tate raised his weapon again. A flash, a roar, a moment of freefall. Then, silence. The escape pod rocketed away from the dying freighter, hurtling into the void. Alex barely had time to strap himself in before the AI system announced an uncontrolled descent. He swore, frantically keying in manual overrides. The pod shuddered violently, spiraling toward the surface of an alien world below. A barren planet covered in jagged mountain ranges and bioluminescent forests. He had survived Tate's betrayal. Now, he had to survive this. When Alex came to, the world around him was still. The escape pod had crashed deep within a canyon, wedged between 2 towering rock formations. His head throbbed, his ribs ached, but he was alive. He forced the hatch open and stumbled out, boots crunching against an unfamiliar terrain. The sky above was an eerie shade of violet, with twin moons casting ghostly light over the landscape. Strange, bioluminescent flora pulsed faintly in the darkness. And then he saw her. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, watching him. Tall and impossibly graceful, with smooth, slate-blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to glow. She was unlike any species he had encountered before. A tattered cloak hung over her shoulders, and a curved blade rested against her hip. An outcast, just like him. Alex reached for his blaster, but the woman tilted her head, unimpressed. "You are not the first to fall from the sky, human." Her voice was melodic, yet edged with suspicion. Alex exhaled, lowering his weapon slightly. "And you are?" She hesitated, as if debating whether to answer at all. Then, finally, she spoke. "My name is Tylia, And if you want to live, you will come with me. Alex glanced around the alien wilderness. He didn't have much of a choice. With a weary nod, he followed the alien girl into the unknown. Tylia moved like a shadow, her steps light and soundless as she led Alex through the alien wilderness. The terrain was treacherous, twisted roots jutted from the ground, and towering rock spires loomed overhead like jagged teeth. Strange, luminescent creatures flitted between the foliage, their delicate forms pulsing with eerie light. Alex struggled to keep up, his ribs aching from the crash. He glanced at Tylia, trying to get a read on her. She was tall, easily a head taller than him, and carried herself with an effortless grace that spoke of both confidence and caution. The blade strapped to her side was well worn, its hilt polished smooth by use. Whoever she was no stranger to survival. You said I wasn't the first human to crash here, Alex said, breaking the silence. What happened to the others? Tylia didn't look back. They died. All of them? A pause. Then, softly, not all. That wasn't reassuring. They traveled in silence for another half-hour, weaving through craggy ravines and dense clusters of alien flora. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something faintly metallic. In the distance, Alex caught glimpses of strange, four-legged creatures with elongated skulls and glowing eyes, watching them from the shadows. Eventually, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking a valley. Nestled at the base of the cliffs was a settlement, if it could even be called that. A cluster of mismatched structures, cobbled together from wrecked starships and salvaged metal, formed a crude encampment. Smoke curled from makeshift chimneys, and dim, flickering lights cast long shadows across the settlement's perimeter. "This is where you live?" Alex asked. Tylia gave a small, humorless smile. "It is where I exist." They descended the ridge, and as they approached, Alex saw movement, figures emerging from the darkness. They were a motley collection of beings, some humanoid, others distinctly alien, their bodies adapted to harsh conditions. Every single one bore the same hardened, wary expression. Exiles. Survivors. They watched him, their eyes filled with something between curiosity and suspicion. A few muttered in hushed tones. Tylia stopped near the entrance, gesturing for Alex to follow. "You will need to speak with Ralvek," she said. "He decides whether you stay or die." Alex sighed. "Great. I love democracy." Tylia didn't react. She simply turned and led him deeper into the settlement. The largest structure in the settlement was a repurposed cargo bay, its rusted walls reinforced with scavenged plating. Inside, a fire burned in a crude metal brazier, casting flickering shadows on the walls. At the center sat Ralvek, a massive, reptilian humanoid with emerald green scales and piercing yellow eyes. His muscular frame was draped in a cloak made from the hide of some unknown beast. He studied Alex with a slow, deliberate intensity. "So," Ralvek rumbled, his voice like grinding stone, "another human falls from the sky." Alex crossed his arms. "Yeah, I seem to have a habit of bad landings." Ralvek's eyes narrowed. "Your kind does not last long here. The planet is unkind to outsiders." Alex exhaled sharply. "Yeah, well, I don't exactly have a return ticket. So unless you plan to kill me, I'd rather talk about how I can help." Silence filled the chamber. Then, unexpectedly, Ralvek laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound, full of something that might have been amusement, or maybe just condescension. "You have spirit, human," he said. "But spirit does not keep you alive." Tylia stepped forward. "He is not useless," she said, her tone even. "He survived a betrayal. He fought his way off a ship full of killers. That is worth something." Ralvek studied her for a moment before turning back to Alex. "Very well," he said. "You will work. You will earn your place. Or you will die like the others." Alex smirked. "Sounds fair." Days turned to weeks. The settlement was unforgiving, and so was the planet. The climate shifted unpredictably, blistering heat during the day, bone-chilling cold at night. The creatures that lurked beyond the perimeter were relentless, their hunger never sated. But Alex adapted. He helped reinforce the settlement's defenses, repaired damaged tech, and scavenged for supplies in the wreckage fields beyond the valley. He learned which plants were safe to eat and which could kill him in seconds. And slowly, very slowly, the others began to accept him. But it was Tylia he trusted the most. She was a mystery, guarded and distant, yet never cruel. Unlike the others, she never treated him like an outsider. She showed him how to move silently through the terrain, how to fight with the curved alien blade she carried, how to listen to the world instead of just seeing it. One night, as they sat near a fire, Alex glanced at her, watching how the firelight reflected in her silver eyes. "You don't talk much about yourself," he said. Tylia didn't look at him. "There is little to say." "I doubt that," he said, smirking. "Everyone here is running from something. What's your story?" For a long moment, she was silent. Then, softly, she said, "I was born to a dying world. My people were proud, warriors, explorers. But we fought the wrong war, trusted the wrong allies. And when our enemies came for us, there was nothing left to fight for." Alex frowned. "You're the last?" Tylia hesitated, then nodded. He exhaled. "Damn, I thought I had it bad." She glanced at him, something unreadable in her expression. "Pain is not a contest, Alex Riker. Loss is loss." He held her gaze, feeling something shift between them. Not pity, not sympathy, understanding. The peace didn't last. It never did. One morning, the sky was torn apart by ships. Not wreckage, not escape pods, ships. Sleek and deadly, their hulls marked with the insignia of the Avari cartel. Alex felt his blood run cold. Tate's deal had gone through. The cartel had come looking for him. But they wouldn't just take him. They would enslave everyone. Ralvek barked orders, the settlement erupting into chaos as survivors scrambled for weapons. Tylia's blade was already in her hand, her silver eyes narrowed. Alex clenched his fists. He had been running his whole life. Betrayed. Abandoned. Alone. Not anymore. Not this time. He turned to Tylia, his pulse pounding. "You saved my life once," he said. "Let me return the favor." She studied him for a moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. The battle for survival had begun. The sky burned. From the valley floor, Alex watched the Avari cartel's ships descend like metal vultures. Their engines flared against the twilight, casting jagged shadows across the settlement. The air vibrated with the hum of repulsor fields and the distant crackle of weapons systems powering up. Ralvek stood at the center of the encampment, his scaled arms crossed over his broad chest. His yellow eyes gleamed in the firelight, scanning the invaders with a calm, calculating menace. Around him, the exiles readied themselves. Blades were unsheathed, salvaged pulse rifles charged, old grudges simmering beneath the surface of their desperate preparation. Tylia knelt beside Alex, checking the charge on a stolen plasma pistol. She moved with precise efficiency, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "They will not negotiate," she said. "They never do." "Didn't expect them to," Alex muttered. He loaded a fresh energy cell into his blaster and glanced up at her. "But they do expect us to run." Tylia tilted her head, curious. "And you have something else in mind?" He smirked. "Always." He turned to Ralvek. "You have explosives?" The massive reptilian leader regarded him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "A few. Salvaged from the wrecks over the years." "Good. We're not gonna win a straight fight," Alex said. "But we can make it costly. They'll land in formation, thinking this is just another easy raid. We hit them first, hard, before they know what's happening." Ralvek bared his sharp teeth in what might have been amusement. "You think like a predator, human?" Alex shrugged. "Nah, just a guy who really doesn't want to get captured today." Tylia watched him with quiet interest. "And if we fail? Then we make sure these bastards regret ever setting foot on this planet." Her lips curled slightly. "That, I can agree with." The cartel's landing craft touched down in a near-perfect military formation. Their hulls were gunmetal black, adorned with crimson insignias. The ramps hissed open, and armored figures spilled out. Mercenaries, bounty hunters, and slavers armed with pulse rifles and shock whips. At their head stood a figure Alex knew too well. Tate. His former partner strode forward, surveying the settlement with a smirk. He wore upgraded combat armor now, sleek and reinforced, and a high-tech plasma rifle was slung over his back. "You really should have stayed dead, Riker," Tate called out, his voice carrying across the valley. Alex, hidden among the wreckage on the ridge above, clenched his jaw. He tapped his comm device. "Ralvek, you ready?" A low growl rumbled through the earpiece. "We are in position." "Good. On my signal." Below, Tate continued his grand speech. "Here's the deal, folks. Hand over Alex Riker, and maybe, we don't burn this little shithole to the ground." A few nervous murmurs ran through the settlement. The cartel had numbers, superior firepower. If Alex had been in their shoes, he might have considered it. Too bad for Tate. These people weren't in it for the easy way out. Alex grinned. "Now," he whispered. The valley erupted. Explosions ripped through the first wave of cartel soldiers, sending fire and shrapnel into the air. Smoke blanketed the landing zone as the exiles emerged from their hiding spots, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts tore through the dust, striking armored mercenaries before they could react. Tate stumbled back, his cocky smirk vanishing. "Shit, get to cover," he shouted. Alex didn't give him the chance. He slid down the ridge, firing as he moved. His shots were precise, dropping 2 cartel enforcers before they even realized where the attack was coming from. Tylia was at his side, a whirlwind of death. She moved like liquid shadow, her curved blade slicing through armor and flesh with brutal efficiency. A mercenary raised his rifle. She was faster. Her blade found the soft space beneath his chin, and with a sharp twist, he crumpled to the ground. "Stay close," she murmured. "Wasn't planning on running," Alex replied, reloading. They fought their way toward the center of the battlefield, taking cover behind burning wreckage. The cartel had regrouped, their sheer numbers pushing the exiles back toward the settlement. Tate, taking advantage of the chaos, spotted Alex through the smoke. His eyes gleamed with malicious delight. "Riker." Alex barely had time to react before Tate opened fire. A plasma bolt slammed into his shoulder, knocking him backward. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and searing. He hit the ground hard, his vision blurring. His blaster skittered from his grip. Tate stalked forward, leveling his rifle at Alex's head. "See, this is how it was always gonna end," Tate said, grinning. "You never were cut out for this game." Alex clenched his teeth, forcing himself to focus. Before Tate could pull the trigger, Tylia struck. She descended from above, moving so fast Tate didn't even have time to turn. Her blade sang, slicing through his rifle's barrel in a single stroke. Sparks flew as the weapon split in two. Tate staggered back, eyes wide. Tylia stood between him and Alex now, her silver eyes like molten steel. "You should run," she said, "before I finish this." Tate cursed, gripping the smoking remains of his rifle. His gaze flickered between Alex and Tylia. Then, with a growl, he tapped a device on his wrist. His remaining forces began falling back toward their ships. Alex coughed, pushing himself up as the cartel ships powered up their engines. "This isn't over, Riker," Tate shouted as he retreated. "I'll be back, and next time, I'll bring the whole damn fleet." Then he was gone, the cartel retreating into the sky. The battle was over. For now, the settlement was in ruins, but they had survived. Alex sat on a makeshift crate near the fire, wincing as Tylia cleaned his wound. Her touch was gentle, though her expression remained unreadable. "You are reckless," she murmured. "Yeah, well," he smirked. "I've got a good backup." She paused, glancing at him. The firelight reflected in her silver eyes, a flicker of something soft beneath the steel. "You did not have to stay," she said. "You could have run." He exhaled, his gaze lingering on her. "I've been running my whole damn life, Tylia," he said. "Maybe it's time I stop." A silence stretched between them, not awkward, but charged. Tylia's fingers brushed his hand, brief but deliberate. "If Tate returns," she said softly, "we may not survive the next battle." Alex tilted his head, studying her. "Then we don't wait for him to come to us." Her eyes widened slightly. "You mean?" "We take the fight to them," he said. Find their base. End this before it begins. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Tylia's lips. I like the way you think, Alex Riker. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The wind howled through the ruins of the settlement. Smoke still curled from the wreckage, the stench of scorched metal and blood lingering in the air. The Alvari cartel had fled, but their threat loomed like a shadow over the survivors. Alex flexed his wounded shoulder, gritting his teeth. The pain was manageable. What mattered now was what came next. He stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sky where Tate's ships had vanished. He wasn't going to wait for them to return. We can't stay here, Tylia said, stepping beside him. He nodded. No. And we sure as hell can't wait for Tate to bring reinforcements. Ralvek approached, his massive frame moving with deliberate slowness. His yellow eyes studied them both before he spoke. You intend to do something foolish, human. Alex smirked. I intend to finish this. The reptilian leader let out a low growl of amusement. Then you will need more than just determination. He gestured for them to follow. They walked through the battered remains of the settlement, past survivors tending to the wounded and salvaging what they could. Ralvek led them to a hidden chamber beneath a collapsed freighter, an underground bunker filled with weapons, supplies, and a ship. A sleek, black stealth craft, half buried in the dirt. Old, battered, but functional. Alex let out a low whistle. Now that's a beauty. Tylia ran her fingers along its hull. Where did this come from? Ralvek's eyes gleamed. I was not always in exile. I once hunted slavers. This was my vessel. Alex turned to him, intrigued. You were a bounty hunter? Ralvek let out a deep, rumbling laugh. A warrior. A predator. Before my enemies left me for dead on this world. And now? Alex asked. Now, I am simply one of the hunted, Ralvek admitted. But perhaps it is time to change that. Alex and Tylia exchanged glances. They were thinking the same thing. This was their chance. The ship needed repairs, but they could make it space-worthy again. And when they did, they wouldn't wait for the cartel to return. They would bring the fight to them. The repairs took days. The exiles worked tirelessly, scavenging parts from wrecked ships and salvaging energy cores from old weapons. Ralvek's stealth craft, once known as the Vengeance, was reborn. But before they could leave, they needed information. Alex sat in the cockpit, adjusting the controls, when Tylia stepped in. We have a lead, she said. He raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Tylia crossed her arms. One of the survivors, an old pilot, claimed to know of a man who sells secrets. He operates out of a black market station in the Osiris Belt. Sounds like a guy we need to talk to. His name is Kane Voss. And if the rumors are true, he's already dead. Alex frowned. What? Tylia's silver eyes gleamed. They say the cartel killed him years ago. But somehow, his name still buys information in the underworld. Alex exhaled. A dead man selling secrets. Great. That's not suspicious at all. Tylia smirked. That's why we're going to pay him a visit. The Osiris Belt was a lawless stretch of space. A tangled mess of shattered asteroids, derelict warships, and pirate hideouts. It was also where people went to disappear. The Vengeance emerged from hyperspace, its newly repaired engines purring like a beast eager for the hunt. Alex gripped the controls, weaving through the asteroid field with practiced ease. Tylia sat beside him, her gaze sharp. There, she pointed. A station floated in the debris, half a wrecked battleship, half a haphazardly built black market hub. Neon lights flickered across its hull, marking it as the Widow's Den. A place where smugglers, bounty hunters, and killers gathered to trade in secrets and blood. Alex guided the ship toward the docking bay. As they landed, he exhaled. All right, he muttered. Let's go meet a ghost. The Widow's Den stank of oil, sweat, and old death. Alex and Tylia moved through the dimly lit corridors, eyes scanning the crowd. Every kind of scum in the galaxy was here. Pirates with cybernetic limbs, mercenaries with glowing red eyes, traitors whose very presence oozed deception. At the far end of the cantina, a figure sat alone in a booth. A human, gray hair, sharp eyes, a long coat draped over his shoulders. He looked up as they approached, smirking as if he had been expecting them. You're a little late, he said. I thought you'd be here sooner. Alex and Tylia exchanged glances. Kane Voss? Alex asked. The man chuckled. Depends. Who's asking? Tylia's expression darkened. People say you're dead. Kane shrugged. People say a lot of things. The trick is knowing which lies to believe. Alex leaned forward. We need information. The Avari cartel. Where they operate from. Where their main fleet is. Kane tilted his head. That's a dangerous question. We like dangerous, Tylia said. Kane studied them for a long moment. Then, he sighed. All right, he muttered. But you're not gonna like the answer. He leaned in, lowering his voice. The cartel isn't just some band of slavers anymore. They've got a patron. Someone powerful. Someone who's been feeding them resources, tech, and weapons. Alex narrowed his eyes. Who? Kane hesitated. Then, finally, he said, the Crimson Syndicate. Silence. Alex's blood ran cold. The Crimson Syndicate wasn't just another criminal empire. They were the criminal empire. The unseen force behind every black market deal, every high-profile assassination, every war fought in the shadows of the galactic underworld. And now, they were backing the cartel. Tylia's fingers tightened around her belt. That complicates things. Kane chuckled. Oh, sweetheart. It doesn't complicate things. He leaned back, smirking. It makes them impossible. Alex exhaled, staring at the table. The stakes had just skyrocketed. This wasn't just about Tate anymore. This was a war bigger than they had imagined. And they were right in the middle of it. Alex leaned back in the dim booth, his fingers drumming the table as Kane Voss's words sank in. The Crimson Syndicate. The name alone was enough to make most mercs and bounty hunters walk away. The syndicate operated in the deepest shadows, controlling vast criminal networks that stretched across entire sectors. If they were backing the Avari cartel, this wasn't just a fight against slavers. It was a war against a power that could swallow empires whole. Tylia shifted beside him, her silver eyes narrowing. Why would the syndicate back a slaver operation? Kane smirked, tapping the rim of his glass. Now that's the right question. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Word in the underworld is, the syndicate's been moving something big. A project. A secret they don't want the galaxy knowing about. And the cartel? They're just their muscle. Their cleanup crew. Alex frowned. And what exactly is this project? Kane exhaled. That's the part one don't know. But I do know this. If you want to find out, you need to go to the source. Tylia's gaze sharpened. You mean their headquarters? Kane nodded. Cartel's main fleet is holed up in the Juno Rift, a nasty stretch of space, full of black holes and ion storms. It's where they take their cargo. But if you go in there, his smirk faded. You don't come back out. Alex exchanged a glance with Tylia. They both knew what this meant. This was suicide. But they had come too far to turn back now. Alex exhaled. Then I guess we'll just have to beat the odds. Kane chuckled. You're insane. Probably, Alex admitted. Kane studied them for a moment, then reached into his coat and slid a data chip across the table. This is all I've got on the Juno Rift. You'll find an old smuggler's route, dangerous as hell, but it'll get you in undetected. Alex picked up the chip. And what do you get out of this? Kane grinned. Entertainment. Tylia rolled her eyes. Just don't die too quickly, Kane added. I hate wasting good advice. Alex smirked. No promises. They left the cantina without looking back. The final mission had begun. The Juno Rift was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. A swirling abyss of shattered space, its darkness pierced only by the crackling arcs of ion storms. Massive gravitational eddies churned at the edges of the rift, ready to tear apart anything that strayed too close. And at its heart, hidden within the maelstrom, was the Avari cartel's fleet. From the cockpit of the Vengeance, Alex tightened his grip on the controls. The stealth ship was flying along the smuggler's route Kane had provided, a razor-thin passage between gravity wells and electromagnetic anomalies. One wrong move, and they'd be nothing but space dust. Tylia sat beside him, monitoring the ship's sensors. We're approaching the outer defense perimeter, she murmured. Multiple cartel patrol ships. If they detect us, they won't, Alex said. Not if we stay on course. Tylia exhaled. I hope you're right. Minutes stretched into eternity as they drifted through the storm, invisible to scanners. Then, through the rift's swirling chaos, they saw it. A massive space station, a fortress carved from the husks of stolen warships, fused together into a sprawling monstrosity. Dozens of slaver ships were docked along its exterior, and the station's core pulsed with an eerie red glow. This is it, Alex muttered. The cartel's heart. And the syndicate's secret, Tylia added. Alex checked his blaster. Let's tear it out. They infiltrated the station under the cover of darkness. Moving through the industrial corridors, they saw the truth. Rows of cells lining the walls, filled with prisoners. Not just humans, but aliens from every corner of the galaxy. Slaves. Some were young. Too young. Tylia's hands clenched into fists. Monsters, she whispered. Alex felt a familiar rage burning inside him. Tate. This was what he had sold him out for. They reached the central control room, where data terminals displayed the syndicate secret. Tylia's eyes widened as she scanned the files. Alex, this isn't just about slavery. Alex frowned. What do you mean? Tylia turned the screen toward him. It was a list, coordinates, shipments, genetic sequences. The cartel wasn't just trafficking people. They were experimenting on them. Alex felt his stomach churn. They're running a black site research facility. Tylia's voice was tight. And they've been doing it for years. Before they could react, an alarm blared through the station. They had been detected. A voice crackled over the speakers, smug and familiar. Well, I knew you'd come, Riker. Tate. Alex turned, his jaw tightening. Show yourself, you bastard. Laughter echoed. Oh, I will. But first, let's see if you can survive this. The blast doors slammed shut. The trap was sprung. Tate emerged with an army at his back. Cartel enforcers. Heavily armed. Ready to kill. But Alex and Tylia didn't run. They fought. The battle raged through the station. Blaster fire illuminated the corridors as they cut through the cartel's forces, pushing toward the docking bay. Alex found Tate first. The traitor grinned. His plasma rifle trained on Alex. You should have stayed dead. Alex charged him. The fight was brutal. Fists, blades, gunfire. They crashed through a control console, sparks flying as Alex slammed Tate's head into the metal. Tate struggled, pulling a hidden knife. But Alex was faster. He grabbed Tate's wrist, twisted, snap. Tate screamed. But Alex wasn't done. He threw him against the bulkhead, leveling his blaster. This is for everything, Alex growled. Tate sneered, blood dripping from his lips. You don't have the guts. Alex pulled the trigger. A single shot, right between the eyes. Tate was dead before he hit the ground. Tylia appeared beside him. It's over. But Alex shook his head. Not yet. He pulled a detonator from his belt. We're sending a message, he said. Tylia smiled. They set the charges, racing back to the Vengeance as the countdown ticked down. As they launched into space, the station exploded, a chain reaction tearing through the cartel's fleet. The heart of the Avari cartel was gone. And the Syndicate? They would never forget Alex Riker and Tylia. As the Vengeance soared into the void, Alex turned to her. So, he smirked. Where to next? Tylia's silver eyes gleamed. Anywhere but back. They were free. Together. And the stars belonged to them.